shall we? What's your one big thing this week, Richard?
It's a thing that's sort of newsy, but it's mostly for me, it's representative. We've been covering Saudi for a while, and there's a playbook often, especially with PIF initiatives. You sort of put out something to define a new regulatory environment. Then you establish, and this is you being PIF, then you establish a sector champion, and then you provide incentives to get that champion moving, and then induce others to come in and try and build up the private sector, try and attract foreign direct investment. And so we've seen this over and over, and I think it was interesting. And one of the comments that came up during our conversation with Mansour and Zainab was the HQ program was announced in 2019 to be, effective January 2024. So that's basically about a 4-year window. And about midway through that, people started to realize this was a term that came up. Well, this is real. So, something's going to happen. They're very serious about this. So we all need to be responsive. So what I want to talk about a little bit is the military industrialization initiative, and specifically GAMI, which is the General Authority for Military Industries, and SAMI, which is the Saudi Arabian Military Industries. Both of these entities were established in the summer of 2017. So that's 6 years ago now. And you can see the playbook. So let's talk about GAMI first, because GAMI was established to essentially set strategies and policies for developing all activities and performance in the industry, manage military procurement, operational contracts for arming the military, and so it's since its establishment in 2017, it's issued 300 and close to 350 permits, close to 200 licenses for facilities. It also founded the Saudi Arabia World Defense Show, which we know has had their second iteration is coming up, correct? Or did they have their second iteration?
The second iteration is
last year,
next month or next year, early next year, yeah.
And it's a big deal, huge deal. All right, so GAMI, as you can see, is sort of the regulatory entity. SAMI is kind of the sector champion. All right, Saudi Arabian Military Industry, SAMI, established again that summer of 2017. Its goal is to be among the top 25 defense companies in the world by 2030. It aims to support localizing 50% of Saudi Arabia's total government defense spending. SAMI has 5 divisions: aerospace, land, sea, advanced electronics, and defense systems. Its goals, again, reducing the country's reliance on foreign purchases of defense products, developing cutting-edge technologies, manufacturing, a constant theme, manufacturing world-class products, and providing, essentially developing a military, being the point of the spear in developing military manufacturing industry. So let's talk about SAMI first. So 6 years after its development, after its establishment in 2017, it claims to have a backlog of over 10 billion in contracts. Now, this is impressive. And because in 2020, SAMI's annual revenue was just 20 million. By 2021, it was 690 million. And by the middle of last year, they had contracts worth more than $2.9 billion. And these are awarded to local companies during a lot of them were awarded during that last World Defense Show last summer. And also they're claiming a localization percentage of close to 15%. So of all these contracts. So they're very actively pursuing the project and the contracting and the manufacturing side of this. And they're doing that a couple of ways. They're signing, a bunch of joint ventures. So they have joint ventures with Navantia, L3 Harris, Thales, Airbus, Boeing, Lockheed Martin. They're joining with significant defense entities to help boost the local environment. One of the interesting things about SAMI is they've essentially become a roll-up firm. So existing in Saudi were defense industries. And SAMI, so, 2019, they acquired Aircraft Accessories and Components Company, which is a large maintenance and repair service provider, again, Saudi. They purchased Advanced Electronics Company, which was always sort of the bellwether of the Saudi defense industry prior to the establishment of SAMI. They rolled up in 2022 the Saudi Rotorcraft Support Company. So they're essentially, like I said, spearheading the manufacturing development, partnering aspect of it. And they seem to be very active, seem to be making real progress. They have challenges. They have competitors. They're struggling with things like staffing, technicians, how to train military technicians. And again, in classic PIF way, they see the shortage on the application and the engineering side, the technician side, the technical side. So they've established a number of academies to train military technicians, sort of vocational schools, but specifically for training military technicians. Another problem is financial, because locally manufactured goods tend to be more expensive. All right. And so again, you see the government, in this case, in the form of GAMI, and we'll come back to GAMI, has spent close to $1.4 billion in 21 and 22 on incentives. So, yes, we know it's a bit of a loss leader, but what's important to us in the long term, it'll become economic over time. So that's the SAMI side of it. The GAMI side of it, and this was actually what prompted me to do this one. They just announced just this week a launch of several investment opportunities in the kingdom's military industry sector, and we see this coming back. So here's GAMI, the regulatory. Here's SAMI, the active agent. GAMI have now launched some in concert with the Ministry of Investment, and specifically the Invest Saudi platform, a series of incentives really to try and induce foreign direct investment and to try and attract defense partners. So you see the playbook unfolding like it so often does, but in this case, the military sector. So to cut it short, but I also think this is interesting. They're promising 10 opportunities in areas that have dual civilian and military application. And those opportunities are phase one, batteries, wires, cables, harnesses and fiber optics, also mechanical transmission components, aircraft propellers and components, pipes, tubes, and rigid tubing. Also, brakes, axles, tires, and track components, as well as electronic circuit components, pumps, electric motors, and valves. What I like about this is that's just basic stuff. They're not shooting for marquee things. They're not, trying to build a fifth generation fighter. They are working at the basic of it. Let's build an industrial base. Let's create some sort of technical expertise and an employment sort of core that we can expand out from. Let's enter in JVs at the most, not the simplest, but very simple manufacturing processes. And in this way, we'll start from the bottom and build up. So anyway, like I said, this was prompted by the GAMI announcement of these 10 new areas. But I thought it was useful to hark back to that summer of 2017 when all this was started. And like the regional HQ program, you can see that this idea started 6 years ago is becoming more and more real. And it's going to be interesting to watch. And it'll be really interesting to see what kind of development they can achieve in terms of not only manufacturing, but also employment. So that's my one big thing this week.
You mentioned that they're beginning with sort of getting these basic sort of, I don't want to say simple because it's not simple. No manufacturing is simple, but basic parts. And that is what they're focusing on now, not fifth generation fighters or anything else like that. And what's interesting is GAMI's CEO is a gentleman by the name of Ahmed bin Abdulaziz Al Ahli, who has been governor of GAMI since March 2019. But he's also, his background is with SABIC. He worked as at Jubail Industrial City, one of the largest industrial cities on the planet. We discussed that in our episodes discussing Bechtel's role in Saudi Arabia. So he sort of has a background on this. And obviously, as a civilian, he isn't a military leader, and that is sort of common. He is with GAMI. With SAMI, I believe it's Walid Abdul Khalid is the CEO, a gentleman, Richard, you and I both know, and have worked with in previous events that we've done here in the U.S. So they have very capable executives at the very top. I think I think that was a really good one big thing, because it's good to really crystallize and understand how this is developing, where they are, this difference between SAMI and GAMI. And I think what's really interesting is part of the reason why this is a huge focus for Saudi Arabia is not necessarily for security and defense. That is a reason, but the other reason is because they're spending a lot of money on foreign military equipment acquisitions and training. It's like a massive part of their budget. And they're still going to have to do that going forward, but money spent developing the industry locally does create jobs and stimulate the economy, but it also saves money on equipment that you may be buying overseas. And this, building a defense sector is like building an automotive sector. You just cannot do it overnight. You may not even be able to do it over a decade. It takes a lot of time. And so it's what we're seeing. I think the takeaway from your one big thing, at least my takeaway from your one big thing, is that they are patiently and strategically doing this the right way. It does take time. I will note too that, looping in investment, you're looping in Khalid Al Fallah, looping in manufacturing and industry, you're sort of looping in Bandar Al Krayef, who is their Ministry of Industry and Mineral Resources. These industries are all very connected. And, that's just sort of interesting that they're really prioritizing that. You saw last year, maybe mid last year, and I think it was, when was this? 2022, that Lockheed Martin said it would invest $1 billion in manufacturing in Saudi Arabia. And, that's part of that is to sort of tap into these opportunities. Saudi Arabia wants to scale that out. They want to get more of that in the mix. And, that's foreign investment into the military sector. So, Khalid Al Fallah is involved. You have manufacturing, you have Bandar Al Krayef and Osama Zamal and the guys at the Ministry of Industry and Mineral Resources. And then you have GAMI and SAMI. So a lot is happening in this sector. It's huge. You can see the GAMI and SAMI buildings when you're driving in from the Riyadh airport in Saudi Arabia. It's a massive sort of near the Riyadh front area, but they are huge. And yeah, I mean, this is a big focus for the kingdom.
It is. And, speaking of a couple of points you made, yes, it aims to localize 50% of Saudi Arabia's government defense spending by 2030. That'd be a huge savings. Take away the technological achievements that you'd attain, the skills, upskilling, the jobs created, the defense capability. Just that is of value. The other thing is on this GAMI thing is they very pointedly said these 10 things have, most of them have civilian and military applications. So, I like these things because, again, so much of when we started out on this, it's like, what on earth is going on? Is there a plan? And there is a plan. And when you look back a little bit, and you get some perspective of distance and time, you see there's a plan. And that's very reassuring because you and I are both trying to be, appropriately skeptical on announcements and goals and, stated achievements and that sort of thing, because they tend to be glowing. What we want to do is come back and look at it where it is in implementation, but it's clear that they have a plan, and it's clear they're moving along the timeline on this plan. And so anyway, as I said, the GAMI announcement, which is, again, part of the plan, which is, all right, we're going to make up these sectors. We're going to provide some incentives. We're going to make it more attractive to investment, is all part of the plan. And you can see this almost sequential playbook in sector after sector after sector. It's really interesting to see this one in the military one.
Yeah, I think we've earned the right to be a little bit skeptical, Richard, as we did not start focusing on Saudi Arabia when Vision 2030 was launched, when they actually started really following through on everything. But before that, there was some times when maybe they didn't follow through, but the announcements were massive. So we just learned a little bit that, hey, let's be a
Yeah,
little
exactly.
analytical about this. Yeah.
But even with Vision 2030, I mean, they're masters of the glitzy launch. So you see that and you go, okay, awesome. Now let's see, how they put it into practice or how they're going to achieve or implement this. And so it's always good to be a little skeptical. And I'm pleased for the most part. We always say over and over again, it's not going to be 100%. You're not going to hit 100% of anything. But it's nice to see that there seems to be a rigorous approach based on a strategy and a playbook in most of these initiatives.